Hi everybody, welcome. My name is Tammy from Homesteading in the City with Tammy. If this is your first time here, thanks for stopping by. If you've been here from the beginning, I really appreciate you coming by each week and watching the new videos that I put out. If you have not subscribed, please consider doing so. It does benefit me by you subscribing to my YouTube channel. We are going to be in the kitchen again today. We are going to be doing processing some dilly beans. If that is something that interests you, stick around. Okay, so the supplies you need for today's video are going to be a large pot, your water bath canner, jars with seals and rings, and of course your green beans, and the supplies that you need to make the pickling solution. Now with green beans, since we are pickling them, we are putting them in an acid base, a high acidic base. We can just water bath them. After I put the screenshot of the supplies you need, I will also put a screenshot of the recipe that I'm going to be using so that you guys have the recipe in the water bath canner information. I'm using the recipe that comes from the Ball Canning book, so I will put that in here now. So once you have your beans all picked, just rinse them in a colander in the sink and let them start drying. The first thing we're going to do after that is get our canners set up and also the pickling liquid in the pot so that they can start getting warm. We need the pickling liquid to actually boil, so we're going to actually get that going while we cut up our green beans and get them into the jars. So you're just going to follow the recipe that I linked previous to this video. And I have about a 1.5 gallon Ziploc bag full of green beans. I don't know how many quarts that's going to give me because I'm going to do mine in quarts and you can do them in pints. I usually cut my beans the length of the quart jar and just line them in the quart jar. And I'll show you what I'm talking about when I go to my beans. But the recipe calls for the ingredients of the recipe says that it will do 4 pints or 2 quarts. So I'm going to say that I probably would have, I know I canned the other day and I had 10 pints of green beans cut up into little pieces. Now these are all long that I probably will say I'm going to have 4 to 5 quarts. So I'm at least going to double my batch because if I have 4 quarts, that liquid will only do 2. I would rather have more pickling liquid than not enough and have to wait for it to come back to a boil. So I could actually do like a batch and a half or 2.5 batches. And I might do that just so that I have enough liquid to go through my batch. So go ahead and get the pickling liquid put together in the pot and then start putting it on to boil. Also get the water in your water bath canner and turn that on to low or medium. Probably low. It depends on how long it's going to take you to cut up your green beans and get them in the jars. So that depends on how high you want to turn your canner on to, and also your pickling solution. You do need to make sure that that comes to a boil. So you don't want it to start boiling too much before you need it. And you're just going to put the first 3 ingredients, which is the salt, the vinegar, and the water into your pot to bring to a boil. Now it doesn't specify in the recipe whether to use cider vinegar or white vinegar. Sometimes it does, so it really doesn't matter which one you use. I usually use the apple cider vinegar. I like the taste of that better with my pickles. But you can use either one, whatever you have on hand. So it doesn't matter. So go ahead and get that ready and then I will show you how I pack my beans. Okay, now that I have it all mixed together, I just need to make sure that I stir it well and try to get my salt dissolved before I put it on the burner, just so that it doesn't do something funny. You just want to try to get your salt dissolved. You also need to make sure that you use canning salt when you do this. So just make sure that you're using your canning salt that is specified for canning, and then make sure that you just stir it till it is dissolved, and then you can put it on the burner and let it start getting warm. And like I said, it depends on how many green beans you have to process. Will depend on how high you want to turn your heat. Okay, so that is all dissolved in there. So I'm just going to put that on the heat and let that start to get warm. Here next to it, I have my water bath canner getting ready to get hot. I probably am going to need to put a little bit more water in that. And that was cold water that I put in there. So I'm going to get that on high and get that going. I would like to try to get this almost boiling before I need to use it. Okay, so what I end up doing with my jars to try to figure out how long of bean I need, I take my quart jar and I'll take a tape measure, and then I just stick it inside the jar and I measure from just below where the ring would go, so that I know that I can do like 5 inches for my beans. And that will be plenty. I'll be able to still put my water in there and they'll all be under the water. So I'll need a bean 5 inches. I usually will go and measure, cut the end of it off. Ooh, can I see here? Cut the end of it off and then measure. I get as straight as I can get a bean measure. And then I just stick it, oops, I can't. Stick it down in my little groove there on my cutting board and use that as my measuring. And I take the rest of them and I have a little bowl here that I'm putting my tips in, so that I will cut those up and get them put into another jar, in a jar for tomorrow when I can the rest of my green beans. But then I just take my beans and I take the tail end of the bean, and I just add them all together like this, and I'll just take my knife and I will cut the end of it off like that, and I'll put that in my little bowl here for discard. And then I will lay them over here next to my bean that I have, and then I'll just cut, and the ends of it will go back in there. Now I just lay my beans, I lay my jar sideways so that I can stick my beans in it and they'll lay flat. And then you can just lay them in there like that. And that's how I do all of my beans. Now like this one's pretty much the length that I need. I'll just trim the end of it and stick it in the jar. But all the ones that are long, I will just cut the ends of them off and measure the length that I need and then put them in my jars. Oops. And then I'll just go about filling my jar that way. So now that I have my jars filled and ready to go, the recipe calls for taking a clove of garlic, and I freeze my garlic, so that's why it looks a little translucent. I freeze it when I get it because I can never use it fast enough. So that's why it looks like it does. It says a clove of garlic per each jar. I'm going to cut mine in half and stick them in the jars. And then it also says a head of dill for your jars. I don't have fresh dill head. So what I'll end up doing is doing a half a tablespoon of dill seed in each of my jars. And this is stuff that you put in, and you can get this going while you're my dill seed I had from previous where I dried it, so I just have it saved in a jar with some cover over top of it so that it will stay fresher. And I will just put a half a tablespoon of dill seed in each jar. And then the next thing that it calls for is a quarter teaspoon of a hot pepper, of cayenne pepper flakes. So I will end up doing, I have some crushed red pepper flakes that aren't really hot. So I will do a quarter teaspoon of those just to give it a little bit of a spice when I do my dill beans. So that just gives it a little bit of a spice. And it doesn't make it so hot that kids can't eat them. So that is all you have to do to get them ready. So now they're ready and waiting for the brine to get up to temp so that I can cover it with the brine. And then I'm just going to put my rings, my seals and my rings on. And of course, making sure that I only do them finger tight. And then I will process them in a water bath. And it says for quarts, you need to process them for 10 minutes. Pints and quarts, it doesn't matter. They only go 10 minutes in a water bath canner. So that's a real quick time. Once everything is boiling, you're able to stick it in there. 10 minutes, you're done. While those are processing, I'll cut the rest of my beans that I have and get them ready to be canned tomorrow, because I still haven't gone to the garden and picked my beans for today. So that's everything is ready, and we're just waiting for our pickling solution to be done. And then we will put pickling solution over top of this to cover it, leaving our headspace of at least a ½ inch. And then we can put them in the water bath and let them process, making sure when you put them in the water bath that they are submerged underwater, that there is at least an inch of water over top of the top of your jars. That will allow them to process correctly. Once you are done, once the timer is done for your 10 minutes in the water bath, and you do that once the canner starts boiling again, that is when you end up starting your timer. So if you put them in and it's not boiling, you can't set the timer right then. You have to wait till it is a full rolling boil. Then you can start your timer for 10 minutes. Let it go full on high for 10 minutes boiling. Then when it's done, turn the burner off, crack your lid on the canner, but do not take it off right away. Leave it for at least 5 minutes. Then take the cover off and leave them sit in the water for another 5 minutes before you pull them out and let them sit on the counter. By doing that, it allows the jars to acclimate a little bit better to the temperature in your house. They're still going to be hot, but they're not as hot because the water is starting to cool down. You're letting the steam come out of it. It'll allow them to acclimate a little bit. That way you will not siphon all of the liquid that's in your jars out onto the table where you're setting your jars to seal. And by the liquid coming out, it could compromise the seal and they might not seal. So once your water or your pickling solution is boiling, you're able to take your measuring cup, which is what I usually use to put the liquid in the jars. It just makes it easier. It's a lot less that it doesn't drip. And you're just going to pour the liquid over top of the beans till you have that ½ inch headspace at the top. And if you have any pickling liquid left, you're able to just stick it in the refrigerator and add it to the next batch that you make. So that's why it doesn't hurt to have more liquid than not, because you can save it and use it at a later date. Oh, I just had enough. A little bit more to put into this one. So I'll top off the rest of mine. I have just a little bit. It's not worth trying to save that little bit left. So, now you're just going to take your cloth and wipe the tops of your jars, making sure that there's no residue or anything on top of your jars. And you can do a cloth, a paper towel, any of that will work as long as you're just checking and making sure that your jars are free of residue. And then just stick your lids on, making sure there's only one, and then put your seal on. And making sure that it screws down and it's only finger tight. Okay, now I'll get them in the canner. So now that they're in the canner and they are below the water, I can put my lid on and wait for these to come to a boil. Once they start boiling, then I can process them for 10 minutes. Well, that is all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed and learned something on how to process some and make some dilly beans. They make a nice addition to a relish tray when you go to take stuff to a picnic. So hopefully that was something that you enjoyed. If you did, please hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the notification button. And as always, I will see you on the next one. Have a good day. Bye.